There's a reality that many people struggle to accept. When you decide to become silent with a narcissist, that silence is not simply a boundary you create for your own peace. To them, it can feel like a complete loss of power. For you, staying quiet can be an act of healing, self-respect, and freedom. But for a narcissist, your calmness becomes something they cannot easily tolerate. They struggle with the idea that you can be happy, stable, and moving forward without needing them. That is when they often begin using hidden strategies to regain influence, test your emotions, and see if they can pull you back into the same cycle. In this video, we will uncover 7 things a narcissist secretly hopes will happen when you choose no contact. This is not only about understanding their behavior, it is about helping you recognize the patterns, protect your peace, and reclaim the power you once gave away. The first thing a narcissist secretly waits for is your reaction. Your reaction is often the one thing they desire the most because it confirms they still have emotional influence over you. Anyone who has experienced a toxic relationship needs to understand one important truth. A narcissist is not truly afraid of your anger, your sadness, or even your emotional outbursts. What affects them the most is when you stop giving them any emotional response at all. In their world, your reactions become a source of validation. It could be an angry message, a desperate phone call, an emotional post online, or even something as small as interacting with an old memory. To you, it may feel meaningless or automatic, but to them, it can feel like proof that they still occupy space in your mind. Think about what happens when you completely disappear. No messages, no calls, no attempts to explain yourself, no opportunities for them to pull you into another emotional conversation. You may believe that silence means the relationship has reached its ending point, but a narcissist may view that silence very differently. Instead of seeing it as your decision to heal, they may see it as a challenge. They begin wondering whether they can still get a response from you. They start looking for ways to test if they still have access to your emotions. This is why they may create small openings to provoke a reaction. They might view your stories without saying anything, share a message that feels strangely personal, or use mutual connections to make sure you hear about them. The purpose behind these actions is often simple. They want to know if they can still affect you. The most important thing to understand is that they do not always need a direct response to feel successful. If you are lying awake at night wondering why they posted something, why they disappeared, or what their actions mean, they may already have achieved what they wanted. The real goal is not always communication. Sometimes the goal is to disturb your emotional balance. A narcissist often learns your emotional triggers. They understand what makes you feel guilty, what creates fear, what brings back old memories, and what makes you question yourself. When you respond from those emotional wounds, whether through anger, sadness, or the need to explain yourself, you are still giving them a place in your inner world. Why does your reaction hold so much importance for them? Because many narcissistic individuals rely heavily on external validation. They look to other people's emotions and responses to reinforce their own sense of importance. Your attention, whether positive or negative, can become a form of emotional supply. It does not matter if you are telling them you love them or telling them how much they hurt you. What matters is that they still feel connected to your emotions. Your focus remains on them. Your energy is still directed toward them. This is where the real shift happens. When you stop reacting, their ability to predict you begins to disappear. They no longer know what you are feeling, what you are thinking, or what your next move will be. The emotional control they once had starts slipping away, and that uncertainty can be extremely uncomfortable for someone who is used to having influence over another person. You may wonder, does this mean I have to become cold or emotionless? The answer is no. You do not need to become a person without feelings. You simply need to become intentional about where your feelings go. Your emotions are valuable. They belong with people who respect them, relationships that nurture them, and experiences that help you grow. Every time you choose not to react to a person who only wants to provoke you, you are sending a powerful message. I am no longer participating in this cycle. That message is stronger than any argument, explanation, or attempt to make them understand. Your reaction is something precious, and you have the right to protect it. Do not allow someone who uses your emotions as a source of control to keep taking something that belongs to you. If you are currently on a no-contact journey, remind yourself that every moment you choose peace over reaction is a moment you take your power back. You do not need revenge. You do not need to prove anything. Your calmness speaks for itself. And when you finally understand the strength of your silence, you realize something important. You were never powerless. You simply had not discovered the power you carried within you. The second thing a narcissist secretly hopes for is that you remain confused. Confusion is one of the quietest but most effective ways they can maintain influence after you walk away. When you choose distance and stop allowing them to control your daily life, they do not always come back with dramatic apologies or obvious attempts to reconnect. Sometimes they create uncertainty by becoming distant, unpredictable, or completely silent. From that silence, they leave behind questions in your mind, and those questions can become a trap. The human mind naturally searches for answers. We want explanations, closure, and a clear understanding of what happened because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. A narcissist may recognize this and use it to their advantage. When they leave things unfinished, when they send mixed signals, or when they suddenly disappear, you may begin searching for meaning. You replay old conversations. You analyze their behavior. You remember the good moments and question the painful ones. You think you are finding clarity, but sometimes you are simply walking deeper into confusion. Imagine this situation. One day they completely stop reaching out. No messages, no calls, no signs that they are thinking about you. At first, you may actually feel a sense of relief. You think, maybe this is finally over. Maybe I can breathe again. But as time passes, new thoughts begin appearing. Why have they not contacted me? Did they move on already? Did I mean nothing to them? Did I make the wrong decision? These questions can slowly pull you back into emotional attachment, and that is exactly what keeps the cycle alive. The surprising truth is that their silence does not always mean they have forgotten you. Sometimes silence itself can become part of the strategy. The purpose is not necessarily to leave forever, but to create a space where you start doubting yourself. Once you begin thinking, maybe I was too sensitive, maybe I overreacted, or maybe everything was my fault, they no longer need to convince you of anything. Your own mind begins doing the work for them. Confusion becomes the invisible connection that keeps you emotionally tied. And this is why confusion can sometimes hurt more than an argument. During an argument, there is at least an exchange of words, emotions, and perspectives. But confusion leaves you alone with endless possibilities. It follows you into quiet moments. It keeps your mind searching for answers that may never come. It creates a cycle of what-if questions that can steal your peace. The key to breaking that cycle is understanding that clarity does not always come from their explanation. Sometimes, clarity comes from trusting your own experience and recognizing the patterns that brought you to the point of walking away. The narcissist does not always need to do anything obvious. Sometimes, they simply step back and allow your own thoughts to become the battlefield. They watch as you struggle with questions, doubts, and emotions that they never have to directly create. Do you understand? Their silence is not always a sign that they have moved on or forgotten you. In many cases, it can become another way of maintaining control. When they are speaking, you have the chance to question their words, recognize manipulation, and defend yourself. But when they disappear, they leave you alone with your own imagination. Your fears, insecurities, memories, and old wounds begin to rise again. And without realizing it, you can find yourself participating in a game they created without them even being present. This is where the real danger of confusion appears. It can slowly convince you to break the boundaries you worked so hard to create. You may suddenly feel the urge to send a message asking, "Are you okay?" or "I just wanted to know if everything is all right." It may seem like a harmless gesture, just one small message coming from concern. But from the perspective of a narcissist, that small action can feel like confirmation that they still have emotional access to you. It tells them that they still occupy your thoughts and that the connection has not completely disappeared. And suddenly the same cycle that you were trying to escape begins again. Never forget this. Your silence is an act of strength. Their silence is not automatically proof of growth or change. You cannot control when they choose to disappear, when they decide to return, or what story they tell themselves. But you always have control over your own response. Instead of constantly asking, "Why are they not contacting me?" turn the question inward and ask, "Why do I need them to contact me?" Instead of thinking, "Maybe I was too distant or too harsh," remind yourself, "I chose peace," instead of returning to a pattern that was hurting me. Instead of searching for answers from them, learn to provide yourself with the understanding you need. The more clarity you create within yourself, the less power confusion has over you. The narcissist's strategy only works when you continue looking toward them for explanations, validation, or closure. The moment you realize that your healing does not depend on their words, their apologies, or their return, their entire approach loses its power. The truth is, many narcissists struggle with feeling irrelevant. Their disappearance may not come from a place of complete detachment. Sometimes they believe that removing their presence will make you miss them, question yourself, and eventually reach back out. But when you stop chasing, stop wondering, and stop waiting, that is when they lose their strongest advantage. So, if you are currently struggling with uncertainty, remind yourself that their silence does not define reality. It may simply be another performance designed to create a reaction. You have the ability to remain still, breathe through the discomfort, and tell yourself, "I do not need their explanation to understand what I experienced. I already know enough." The greatest victory is not proving that they miss you. It is reaching a place where their absence no longer controls your emotions. Because true freedom begins when someone else's silence can no longer disturb your peace. The third thing a narcissist secretly wants is for you to feel guilty. Guilt is one of the strongest emotional chains they can place on someone who decides to walk away. There are many things that can hurt a person, but guilt has a unique power because it stays inside your own mind. It follows you even when the other person is nowhere around. And narcissists often understand how powerful this emotion can be. When you finally choose distance, when you decide that you cannot continue accepting the same painful patterns, they may try to plant one question deep inside you. Am I the one who caused all of this? They want you questioning your own decision instead of recognizing the reasons that forced you to make it. In many unhealthy relationships, the narcissist has a way of changing the story. They position themselves as the person who was hurt while making you feel like the person responsible for everything falling apart. You choose silence to protect yourself, and suddenly they become the victim in their own version of events. Maybe they tell others, "I did everything I could, but they left me." Maybe they share indirect messages online that make you wonder if they are talking about you. And the moment you see or hear those things, guilt begins to grow. You start questioning whether you were too distant, too unforgiving, or too harsh. The reason guilt is such an effective weapon is because it does not require them to be physically present. They do not have to convince you every day. Once the guilt enters your mind, it can continue working on its own. It makes you replay the beautiful memories while pushing aside the moments when you were hurt. It makes you focus on their pain while forgetting your own. Slowly, you may begin thinking, maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I should have tried harder. Or maybe I should have stayed. And before you realize it, you begin feeling sympathy for the person who repeatedly caused you pain. This is often where a narcissist's greatest advantage appears: your ability to care. Your empathy, your desire to understand, and your willingness to see the good in people are beautiful qualities. But someone who wants control can use those qualities against you. They know that if they can make you feel responsible for their emotions, you may return to fix what was never yours to repair. You may try to save them, comfort them, or prove that you are not a bad person, and that is how the invisible weight of guilt pulls you back into the same cycle. But the truth is much different. You are not wrong for protecting yourself. You are not wrong for saying that you have reached your limit. You are not wrong for refusing to continue accepting manipulation, dishonesty, or emotional pain. If someone chooses to misuse your love instead of respecting it, that responsibility belongs to them, not you. The guilt they create is not always a reflection of reality. Sometimes it is simply a strategy designed to make you return. They know exactly what thoughts will affect you. They know you may worry that they are suffering without you. They know you may fear that you abandoned someone who needed you. They know your heart may struggle with the idea of hurting another person. And they can use those feelings as a way to regain influence. But when you step back and look honestly, you begin to see another truth. The real abandonment happened every time your feelings were ignored. Every time your needs were dismissed, and every time your love was taken for granted. You were present, you cared, you tried, you gave chances, you carried the emotional weight of the relationship. If there is anything to learn from that experience, it is not that you should blame yourself. It is that love should never require you to destroy yourself in order to prove your loyalty. Caring for someone does not mean sacrificing your own peace endlessly. Remember, guilt is not always evidence that you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt is simply the leftover effect of being conditioned to put someone else's needs above your own. Whenever that feeling appears, ask yourself an important question. Am I guilty because I truly harmed someone, or because I was taught to feel responsible for their emotions? The answer can help you break free from that emotional trap. And understand this as well. Someone's sadness does not automatically mean you are responsible for fixing it. A person can feel hurt by your boundaries and still be responsible for their own behavior. Real love does not demand that you live under constant guilt. It does not ask you to keep suffering just to prove that you care. So when guilt appears, change the way you speak to yourself. Instead of asking, "Was I too cruel?" ask, "Was I treated with the same kindness I was expected to give?" Instead of thinking, "Did I hurt them by leaving?" remind yourself, "How much pain did I endure while staying?" The strongest realization comes when you stop saying, "I abandoned them," and begin saying, "I decided I would no longer abandon myself." The more you hold on to that truth, the weaker guilt becomes. One day, you will look back and understand that guilt was never proof that you were wrong. It was simply a reminder of a pattern you finally chose to break. Real love does not trap you with shame. Real love allows you to breathe, heal, and experience peace. And you deserve a love that feels like freedom, not a burden you have to carry. The fourth thing a narcissist secretly desires is your obsession. Obsession is the invisible connection they hope remains long after the relationship ends. If your reaction is the immediate reward they seek, then your continued mental attachment is the deeper satisfaction they want to maintain. They do not necessarily need you to return. They do not need you to tell them you still love them. They do not even need a single message from you. As long as they remain present in your thoughts, as long as their memory continues occupying your emotional space, they may feel that they still have influence over your life. Look closely at the pattern they create. A narcissist rarely leaves in a way that gives complete closure. They often do not provide honest explanations, genuine accountability, or a peaceful ending. Instead, they leave behind unanswered questions, unfinished conversations, and missing pieces. The human mind naturally struggles with incomplete situations. We want answers. We want understanding. We want to know why something happened. And that unfinished feeling can keep you trapped in a cycle of overthinking. You may find yourself lying awake at night asking, why did they suddenly become different? Were their promises ever real? Was I somehow not enough? These questions reopen wounds that were already trying to heal. During those moments, even if the narcissist is physically gone, their influence can still remain active. Obsession does not always look like missing someone. Sometimes it appears as longing for the good memories, replaying the moments when everything felt beautiful, and wondering if that version of them was ever real. Other times, obsession appears as anger, constantly remembering the lies, the betrayal, and the emotional pain. This does not happen by accident. It happens because the mind is still trying to process what happened. When you remain connected to yesterday's wounds, it becomes harder to fully experience today's opportunities. And that is exactly how the past continues controlling you, even when the person is no longer around. So, how do you finally break free from this invisible attachment? The answer is not forcing yourself to erase every memory. Memories cannot simply disappear because you demand them to. The answer is changing the meaning behind those memories. Instead of looking back and asking, "Why did they treat me this way?" begin asking, "What strength did I discover by surviving this?" Your sleepless nights are not proof that you still belong with them. They are signs that your mind and heart are recovering from something deeply painful. Once you understand that obsession is not the same as love, you begin taking your power back. Stop seeing them as an unfinished story. Accept that some chapters end without perfect explanations. You do not need their apology to move forward. You do not need their understanding to heal. You can give yourself the closure you were waiting for. A narcissist may want to remain unforgettable because being remembered makes them feel significant. But you are not responsible for keeping anyone alive inside your mind. You have the right to clear emotional space, release what hurts you, and make room for something healthier. The most powerful thing you can do is not force yourself to forget them. Instead, create a life so meaningful that their presence no longer feels important. When you laugh without guilt, sleep peacefully, and open your heart again without fear, the obsession slowly loses its grip. Remember, being unable to stop thinking about someone does not prove they were extraordinary. Sometimes it only proves that you experienced something deeply painful, and pain can heal. What a narcissist fears most is not simply being forgotten. It is the moment when you no longer need to remember them at all. The day you wake up, look at yourself, and genuinely think, "I deserve a peaceful life, even if they are not part of it," is the day you reclaim your freedom. That is the moment you truly win. The fifth thing a narcissist often tries to control is the story. The story becomes a hidden weapon because the way people see a situation can influence how they judge, trust, and respond to you. A narcissist understands the power of perception. When you leave, when you stop explaining yourself, and when you choose silence, they often cannot control your actions anymore. So instead, they try to control the narrative around those actions. They know that if they can shape the story, they can still influence how others view you and sometimes even how you view yourself. Stories are powerful because they do not only exist in the minds of others, they can also become voices inside our own heads. When someone repeats a version of events again and again, it can make you question your own reality. This is where a narcissist often attempts to gain an advantage. They may present themselves as the person who was hurt. They may say things like, "I gave everything and they abandoned me," or "I always tried, but they never appreciated me." Instead of creating obvious lies, they often mix small pieces of truth with their own interpretation until the final picture looks completely different from reality. The painful part is that many people may believe this version because narcissists can appear very convincing. They may present themselves as kind, reasonable, and misunderstood. They may speak calmly while describing themselves as the victim. Meanwhile, the person who actually experienced the emotional pain may stay quiet because they are trying to protect their peace. And this creates an unfair situation where the person who suffered carries the wounds, while the person who caused the damage controls the public image. But the reason they work so hard to control the story is often because your silence removes their ability to continue the old pattern. When you stop reacting, stop defending yourself, and stop giving them emotional energy, they lose part of their control. To fill that empty space, they may create a new story where they are innocent and you are the problem. They may not openly attack you. Instead, they use subtle comments that create doubt. They might say, "I don't know what happened to them," or "I tried for so long," or "they suddenly changed." These statements may not directly accuse you, but they plant ideas in people's minds. The most harmful part is when you hear that story and start questioning yourself. You begin wondering, was I too harsh? Did I give up too quickly? Could I have done more? But this is the moment when you must reconnect with your own truth. You cannot control what another person says. You cannot control every opinion people form. But you can control whether you abandon your own reality to accept someone else's version. The answer is to rewrite your own story, not for the purpose of proving anything to others, but to remind yourself what actually happened. Remember the moments when you cared. Remember the effort you gave. Remember the times you tried to make things work. And remember that choosing yourself after repeated pain is not cruelty. It is self-respect. Walking away from something that destroys your peace is not betrayal. It is an act of protecting your own worth. When you stand firmly in your truth, false stories lose their power. You do not need to explain yourself to everyone. You do not need to chase every rumor or defend every accusation. Your life, your healing, and your choices will eventually speak louder than words. Time reveals patterns. Actions reveal character. And the truth does not need constant promotion to exist. A narcissist may try to take control of your story and make you feel smaller, but your story was never theirs to own. It has always belonged to you. Every decision you make, every step you take, and every moment you choose healing over pain adds another page to your real story. Choose to become the person who walked through darkness and found the way back to the light. In the end, their accusations and performances become background noise, but the truth you live will always be the strongest message. The sixth thing they try to influence is your energy. Energy is the invisible connection they often attempt to keep draining even after physical separation. Many people experience something confusing after leaving a narcissistic relationship. They may have blocked the person, stopped communicating, and removed them from their daily life. Yet they still feel emotionally exhausted. They wake up with anxiety. They feel tension when the person's name is mentioned. They carry a heaviness that makes it feel as though the relationship never truly ended. This does not mean you are weak. It often means your mind and emotions are still recovering from a stressful attachment. When you were connected to them, they may have gained your attention through conflict, emotional pressure, constant explanations, and situations where you felt forced to prove your value. But when you choose silence, the dynamic changes. They may no longer have direct access to your emotions, so they look for indirect ways to create a reaction. It could be a sudden interaction with an old memory, a vague message, a reminder through mutual connections, or even complete silence that leaves you wondering what they are thinking.